When it launched in 2009, Northstar was part of a crop of promising new commuter rail services in North American cities lacking in the mass transit department. Operating 40 miles between downtown Minneapolis and Big Lake, Minnesota, Northstar almost immediately saw decent ridership, pulling in around 700,000 annual passengers with just 4 round trips a day, mostly serving suburbanites commuting to and from the city for work. For more than a decade, ridership remained steady, and all was well until 2020. As was the case with every passenger rail system in North America, and the world for that matter, ridership plummeted as most people began to work from home. Not really that surprising, but what is surprising is that more than 5 years later, when most passenger railroads have recovered or even exceeded their pre-2020 ridership numbers, Northstar hasn't even come close to recovering. In 2017, 2018, and 2019, Northstar saw more than 750 passengers annually, an all-time high. Understandably, this number dropped to around 150 in 2020, and then to 50,000 in 2021. Over the course of the next few years, this number would grow a little, but more than half a decade after 2020, ridership stands at 127,000 annual passengers, an 84% decrease from the strong 2019 numbers. Inevitably, in the summer of 2025, the state of Minnesota decided it was time to shut down Northstar operations, replacing them with the more frequent express bus service. 4 daily train round trips would be replaced with 40 daily bus round trips, making way for a more frequent service that's cheaper to operate. In most cases, I'd say this is a bad decision, but based on Northstar's dwindling ridership numbers, operating frequent buses is far better than running infrequent trains with only a few passengers on board, and thus this increase in service will undoubtedly be more desirable thanks to its more flexible departure times. The Minneapolis to Big Cloud corridor just doesn't seem to have enough demand to warrant high-capacity rail service, but will probably be quite well served by a bus. Anyway, in January of 2026, Northstar will be shut down, and the era of commuter rail in Minneapolis will come to an end. Train stations will go dormant, and the trains will sit dead in the yard. Man, tough break for the Twin Cities. That's not what this video is about though. When Northstar began service in 2009, it purchased brand new locomotives and rail cars, which are still relatively modern and lightly used. With countless commuter railroads seeing increased ridership and investment, and in turn increases to service, there are plenty in need of more train cars and locomotives, and with the average time to procure brand new equipment being around 4 years, the state of Minnesota has a great opportunity to make a few bucks, all while providing much needed equipment for a fellow passenger railroad. So that begs the question, who's going to buy Northstar's trains? Well, to answer this question, first we have to understand what their fleet looks like. Northstar rosters a total of 6 locomotives and 18 rail cars, both of which are models commonly used across North America. In 2008 and 2009, Northstar acquired 12 coaches and 6 cab cars built by Bombardier. These bi-level cars have been in continuous production under many different manufacturers since 1976, and their design has proven extremely reliable on 14 different commuter railroads. At the same time, 6 MP36PH-3C locomotives were produced by Motive Power Incorporated for Northstar. Like the Bombardier bi-levels, these MP Express locomotives are extremely popular in North America, with 13 different operators across the country. Both Northstar's rail cars and locomotives are widely known to be extremely reliable, and given their light use over the last decade and a half, one could expect them to run without any major issues well into the 2030s. Safe to say, these trains will be pretty desirable, so what railroads might be interested? Well, first off, let's talk about the most obvious scenario. When news came about that Northstar would be ceasing operations, 2 parties came forward and publicly expressed interest in acquiring some Northstar equipment. First off, the Dallas-Fort Worth area commuter rail, Trinity Railway Express, was looking to lease 1 train set from Northstar, consisting of 1 locomotive, 2 cab cars, and 3 coaches, allowing them to run extra service for the World Cup, which will be in Dallas in the summer of 2026. Additionally, around the same time, Amtrak was dealing with an equipment shortage system-wide, but particularly in Chicago, where Horizon cars were pulled from service upon the discovery of premature corrosion. Midwest routes like the Hiawatha, Lincoln Service, and Wolverine were forced to poach Amfleet cars from busier Northeast routes to replace the Horizons, which were already standing in for new Siemens Venture cars that were behind schedule on deliveries. Amtrak, like TRE, expressed interest in temporarily leasing Northstar equipment to stand in on Chicago to Milwaukee Hiawatha train, which is essentially a glorified commuter train already. 1 train set consisting of a locomotive, 3 coaches, and a cab car is planned to be leased until the final Venture cars and cab cars are delivered by Siemens in the next few years. Altogether, if both deals go through, this would account for 2 locomotives, 6 coaches, and 3 cab cars, leaving 4 Northstar locomotives, 6 coaches, and 3 cab cars up for grabs, and that's assuming neither of these 2 leases fall through, as happens sometimes with these kind of things. So, now it's time to enter the speculation zone. What railroads would be interested in leasing between 4 and 6 locomotives, and between 9 and 18 coaches and cab cars? First off, let's start with the coaches. As mentioned, the Bombardier bi-level design is extremely popular, being used on more than a dozen railroads across North America. If I had to guess, railroads that already operate these cars will be the ones that show the most interest in them. Since the process of training shop crews, qualifying operators, and maintaining a completely new coach or locomotive model can be quite time-consuming, it's likely not worth a railroad's time to acquire them unless they already operate similar equipment or are in a situation like Amtrak, which needs substitute equipment for the substitute equipment. Additionally, Bombardier bi-level cars are designed for low-level boarding, meaning that any railroad with high-level platforms is also out of the question. So with that, here are some contenders. Northern California's Altamont Corridor Express operates a respectable fleet of Bombardier bi-level coaches on its service between Stockton and San Jose. Many of these cars are slightly older than Northstar's and may be due for replacement. More importantly, ACE has plans to expand service into the Central Valley to Merced and even up to Sacramento. Surely when this service is expanded, they'll be in need of more trains. Just a few hang-ups though. Though this hasn't been confirmed yet, there are loose plans to operate Caltrans' own Stadler Hydrogen multiple units on this new service when it begins. Second, Altamont Corridor Express just started acquiring brand new bi-level cars in 2022 and could just continue this order for more if needed. And third, the amount of cars for sale by Northstar probably isn't enough to allow them to fully expand service, especially if Amtrak and Trinity Railway Express end up leasing some. In a similar vein, Orlando's Sunrail is in the process of studying the viability of expanding service to connect with Brightline at Orlando International Airport and run as far west as Disney World on an all-new line known as the Sunshine Corridor. Obviously, if built, this would create a need for more train cars, but even in its current state, Sunrail sees decent ridership and only runs 2 or 3 car trains. If they're interested in making them an extra car longer, they know who to call. Next up is Frontrunner, which I've always gotten mixed up with Northstar. Frontrunner operates in the Salt Lake City area and has fared much better than Northstar ridership-wise. UTA, the transit authority in charge of Frontrunner, has been investing in second-hand bi-level cars, acquiring a few from San Diego's Coaster. If they happen to be in the market for more, Northstar is a perfect option. Additionally, UTA has proposed the electrification of Frontrunner, which would likely also come with an increase to service. If this ever went through, they'd probably just purchase Stadler electric multiple units given their proximity to the factory, but if they stick to push-pull trains for whatever reason, Northstar's cars are once again very desirable. Toronto's GO Transit, Los Angeles' Metrolink, Seattle's Sounder, and Vancouver's West Coast Express commuter rails are all in the same boat, railroads with strong ridership that may be looking to add a few cars onto their trains. All 4 operate Bombardier bi-levels, and to be honest, they all could be interested. This one's the most boring option, but definitely pretty likely. Finally, there's one commuter rail on here that doesn't already operate Bombardier bi-levels but totally could. Nashville's WorldwideRailfan is the smallest commuter railroad in the country with the lowest ridership and probably the worst trains. Its passenger fleet consists of gallery cars originally built in the 50s and 60s that are well past their prime. Like Northstar's coaches, the galleries are designed for low-level boarding only, so some second-hand Bombardiers would be a very welcome upgrade from these ancient cars. What about the locomotives? Well, like the coaches, I would guess that the railroads most interested in Northstar's locomotives would be the ones that already operate similar models. Interestingly though, the MP36 would appeal to a lot more since they're mechanically very similar to the F40PH, which is operated all over the country. I'd say current MP36 operators would probably be the most interested, but I wouldn't discount any railroads that operate F40s either. My first guess is Frontrunner. Like I said earlier, Frontrunner seems to be expanding service as of late and could be in need of more locomotives. Interestingly, Northstar's MP36s would fit right in, as one actually was originally owned by them. When Frontrunner began service in the late 2000s, they had a small surplus of brand new MP36 diesels, and they ended up selling 1 to Northstar and 2 to the MBTA. Wouldn't it be funny if Northstar's ex-Frontrunner engine went home to Salt Lake City? Though that's fun to imagine, Chicago's Metra is pretty clearly the most likely suitor of Northstar's locomotives. They're infamously old school and don't like operating any sort of locomotive that doesn't have an EMD prime mover, and the MP36s are exactly that. On top of that, Metra already rosters 27 MP36s, so Northstars would fit right in. Not really a whole lot more to say here. Metra will probably buy them. Like with the passenger cars, there are a handful of commuter rails that I could see buying the MP36s just to expand service or in some cases standardize their fleet, replacing older engines like the F40 and F59 models. Interested railroads could include GO Transit, New Mexico Rail Runner, Sounder, Virginia Railway Express, WeGoStar, and West Coast Express. I'd say all are contenders, but none as likely as the EMD hoarder that is Metra. Finally are the wild cards. Here are a handful of railroads that could come out of nowhere and swipe up Northstar's trains, but they're probably not who you'd think of first. Amtrak is always on the table. Obviously, they're already interested in acquiring some of Northstar's equipment for the Hiawatha, but there are plenty of other services that could utilize this equipment, especially given their ambitious network expansion plans. Another that's been in the news a little bit in the last year is the Lynx Red Line. The Red Line is a proposed commuter rail service in the Charlotte, North Carolina area that's currently in the planning stages. The city has already gone ahead and purchased tracks from Norfolk Southern, so they're actually moving forward. With service tentatively planned for 2029, some cheap secondhand trains could be a way to start service in a timely manner. Next up is the true wildcard, that being Mexico. In the last 2 years, the government of Mexico has been creating new passenger rail lines seemingly every few months. While some use modern state-of-the-art equipment, there are also quite a few that use random hand-me-down trains. Let's play a game. Which of these pieces of equipment are not in Mexican passenger service right now? You got the SPV 2000s, brand new Gevos, MBTA commuter coaches, Metrolink F59s, and British HSTs. Any guesses? Trick question. All of this equipment is being used down there. See what I'm saying though? I wouldn't be surprised at all if Northstar's trains went south of the border. At the end of the day, it's really anyone's guess as to where Northstar's equipment will end up, but that's what makes the speculation fun. What is certain is that there's a rare opportunity here for a railroad to scoop up relatively modern, lightly used passenger trains at a serious discount. With new railcar and locomotive orders taking years to fulfill, getting reliable hardware almost immediately is a huge advantage. Wherever these trains go, they'll almost certainly have a brighter future than they would collecting dust in the Twin Cities.